My friends, in the event that you are new to this wonderful card game and you have not yet signed up for a UGN Play account, you can now sign up with my exclusive referral code Alliteration and get yourself 50 bonus loyalty points for free, as well as additional loyalty points for every event that you play in within my referral code period. Why do you need these, you might ask? Well, loyalty points can be used to redeem free promotional cards in the mail, as well as other exclusive items coming in the future. The bonus points from using my code are enough to redeem almost any promo card right off the bat, and having your UGN account is going to allow you to accrue and track more and more as you go through your hero or villain's journey. If free cards and progression all sound super appealing to you, the links for all of this are going to be in the description below. Now, let's get on to the video. Good evening, my rational viewers, and welcome to another Alliteration gaming video. My name's Levi, and today we're going to be doing yet another Eraserhead deck profile on the channel, except this time we are revisiting my beloved All symbol. Little history lesson for you guys. This was the symbol that I started playing Eraserhead on back in Set 2, because as popularized as the Void builds were, and still are actually, I just didn't really jive with them, and I really wanted to try playing the All symbol because it was one that I hadn't experimented with yet, and I actually think I ended up finding a much superior build for Eraserhead. Now in Set 3, I really thought that that build was going to go the way of the dodo, because it just didn't seem that combined with the loss of Unwavering Slash and then not getting things like Blood Moon Rending like Void did in the world of Set 3, I really didn't think the All build was going to be able to cut it anymore. But after playing a few different Void builds quite a lot in the world of Set 3, and covering them quite extensively as well, you can find on the channel 2 different Void Eraserhead weapon deck profiles that I took down different Provisional Store Championships with over that little era, and I've played those a lot and they are fun, but I really just couldn't resist trying to go back to the All symbol because it just did a lot of things that the Void symbol doesn't do with Eraserhead that I really enjoy. And so, packing a whole new slew of weapons from the Eraserhead starter deck and a couple new choice foundations from Heroes Clash as well, we are going to dive into the brand new and improved All Weapons Eraserhead profile. And so before we get onto the deck itself, we've got to talk about Eraserhead himself. He's got 3 really sweet abilities. The first one lets us start the game with a copy of Erase in our discard pile. This is our very cool action card that lets us do a lot of cool things, but we'll get onto that in just a moment. His Enhance allows you to pick up Erase at any point in time, even discarding Erase as its own cost and then picking it right back up to give essentially a free +2 or -2 speed to all our moves. On a 7 hand size character, that is an insanely strong blanket ability, being able to speed buff or speed sap any move ever. It's extremely strong. And then his response just says that when you play or block with an action, which blocking with an action is playing an action, so it doesn't actually need to say that now that I think about it. That's kind of redundant text. But when you play or block with an action, you can commit this guy to just draw 2 new cards. So effectively, at base value, before we even get onto what this cool blue card does, Eraserhead at base value is a 9 hand size character that can give +2 speed to all of our moves and -2 speed to all of our opponent's moves, and that is actually just crazy. But it does not stop there, because here we have Erase. So Erase is a really cool action card that just says whenever an attack gets played, our rival's attack, we get to cast this and then simply say they cannot play the abilities on the character during this attack. So this only affects abilities during the attack, so things like Jiro's responses will not get affected. She'll still be able to use those because it's while the attack is being played, but things like Shigaraki's damage burn and Kirishima's response to take half damage do take place during the attack, so they will get affected. Those abilities cannot be used while Erase is active. So there's a lot of minute and minor random interactions with this card, so if you're going to play Eraserhead, you really do need to do your study guide and figure out what you can and cannot affect. And then our other ability on Erase just lets us on-demand seal any asset or foundation that we want, which is also extremely potent. Now this does remove it, so you're not going to be able to go in and get your Erase from your discard pile anymore, so you want to have multiple Erases before you start removing these willy-nilly. But an on-demand seal is one of the most powerful things you can be able to do in this game. So many games are won or even lost on the back of, if I had just sealed that thing, I wouldn't have died, or if I hadn't sealed that thing, I wouldn't have been able to close out the game. So there's just so many applications for that. On top of that, Erase is a +1 mid-block with Breaker 1, meaning we're going to add on to our brief synopsis of Eraserhead and an infinitely recurrable +1 mid-block with Breaker 1. Eraserhead's powerful set of abilities combined with the text on Erase essentially just makes him a defensive powerhouse with really strong backswings and the power to address almost any situation you're your rival puts you in, and that level of skill expression is why he is my favorite character to play in this game. So I'm going to move Mr. Eraserhead himself down here so we can get on to the real star of the show, and that's the main deck and how it props up and supports our very powerful character. So this is a all weapons deck, so this attack lineup is going to be a huge package of weapons that are all very, very fluid and extremely synergistic with each other. And the first one that we're going to go over is 4 copies of Create Capturing Net. Create Capturing Net is hands down our best opener in the deck. It lets us build down any foundation essentially straight from our hand into our stage, gain all the benefits of that card on demand, and it gains stun 2 in the process, which just really helps committing down our opponent's resources and denying the ability to block any of our super fast moves. Honestly, every deck really wants a good stun 2 opener, and Create Capturing Net is almost as good as they come. The next move that we're going to talk about is 4 copies of Binding Cloth Assault. Binding Cloth Assault is amazing. This is our best extender, it's our best flow card, it's our best advantage engine, and in tandem with other cards in the deck, it can occasionally be a really good finisher as well. Being able to trade any one card for 2 cards off the top of our deck fuels our attack strings, fuels our builds from there on after. It's just got so many applications, and it's really, really a big part of why I think the all and void weapon packages work so well, is because they have a card like Binding Cloth Assault. Just as almost every single deck wants a good stun 2 opener, every single deck also wants a really good cantrip attack. This card's just fantastic. Continuing forward with our extenders, we've got 3 copies of Binding Cloth Whiplash. This is one of the new attacks from Eraserhead starter deck, and it is literally just Crow and Frog on a combo ability. You know that card that just got banned? Yeah, we've got it. Even as a combo ability, it's a 4 diff, so it's effectively like a 5 diff, same thing as Crow and Frog. So you're getting like the same level of value out of it. It's combo, but everything in this deck is a weapon and a combo. Every single card is, so we don't actually have to ever worry about those requirements. It just says how you have to have played a card before it. And another cool thing about this card is that it says this attack does not count towards progressive difficulty, which is different wording than Crow and Frog says this card doesn't count, but it's still been ruled that Faith Shield does not stop this card from not counting towards progressive difficulty. So even if they Faith Shield this, it still doesn't count. Next up, we've seen a lot of extenders, but how do we actually kill our rival? Where the next 6 cards are going to be how. Starting off with 3 copies of Binding Cloth Capture. This is Eraserhead's ultra rare from the original set 1, and it is one of the most powerful things in our lineup, effectively becoming a 3 difficulty attack after we've played an action that not only seals our rival's best defensive piece or just rips a card out of their hand. Cloth Capture, absolutely astounding card, and a huge way of how we actually take down our rival's health to 0 in this deck. The next best way that we take him down to 0 is another new card from Eraserhead starter deck, and that's 3 copies of Total Erasure Binding. Holy cow, do I love Total Erasure Binding. This is effectively a 6 difficulty attack if you want the full value of its combo, but man, triple seal is extremely good. It's a free erase, it's 3 seals. It also has powerful 3, which is actually massive. This deck pokes really well, so we get a lot of momentum across our poke turns, and being able to have something we can dump massive damage on once we orchestrate them into a situation where a 6 high, right, because of our character, is unblockable. You can open with this card, and it's at least a powerful move that gets a free erase on them, which is not bad, especially if you're against something like Jiro or Kirishima 2 or Mineta 2. You can also do the same thing with Binding Cloth Capture, where you can just open with it as a 5 diff move that just seals something, which is also like not terrible. Obviously, no matter what, Capture Net is your best opener, but these are just ways that the other moves can still provide a little bit of value even when you're not getting their combo abilities off. Being able to bring this in at like the end of a string, sealing their releases, their self-sacrifices, their passing the torches, their struggling with studies, their graceful maneuvers, any of the ways that we're going to either recoup cards in their hand to block it or use cards on their stage to posture more blocking power. You come in, you take down all of that, and then you just powerful this to heck and back, and it's an extremely good finisher. This is really what the deck was lacking. Last but certainly not least, we've got 3 copies of Binding Cloth Precision. Binding Cloth Precision is just a very neat little card that can come in really clutch in a lot of situations. It starts off as a 4 low for 3 in our character, and then if it's the 3rd card, it's a 6 low for 5. If it's the 5th card, it's a 7 low for 6. And those are just really crazy numbers for a 3 difficulty attack to be doing. It can be really important in a lot of those scenarios. There's a lot of cool tricks you can do with it, like being able to be like attack, foundation, and like then play this on the end of it as like a big move is really cool. Being able to set up the next card you play with a combo enhance is also really really handy. It's just an extremely handy card. For a long time, I was playing Netgun Surprise over this card just as an additional stun 2 move and a really good opener in the deck as well. The issue that I kept running into with this card is while it is a weapon, it's not a combo, meaning if you wanted to play Whiplash right after it, you won't get your combo requirement met. So you cannot play Whiplash as your second attack, which is like when you want to play the card, and Netgun just doesn't let you do that. So I like that this was just a weapon and a combo that I could open with and like not have to suffer any consequences for while turning on the rest of my string. And then sometimes it's also just a random like bomb. And so that's the entire attack lineup. It is 20 very cool weapons. This is kind of your best opener. These are like pseudo openers. This is like your finisher package, and these are just kind of like your primary extenders. This attack package just does it all. It gains stats, it gives you card draw, it stuns your opponent's board, it seals your opponent's board, it discards their cards, it cheats progress difficulty. None of these moves are truly threatening in their own right, but it's when they all come together and you start chaining a ton of combo abilities back and forth, you can find lethal on your rival very efficiently and very rationally. So now before we get into the foundations in this deck, the cards that actually allow us to play all of these very cool attacks, let's talk about the rest of the actions. First off, we've got 3 more copies of Erase inside of the deck. We've already gone over Erase. You definitely want multiple of them. You want to find as many as you can so that you can constantly threaten the presence of your +1 mid block with breaker 1s. You really don't want to run out of Erases, and you want to find that second one ASAP because there's just so many threatening mid attacks in the game right now of having all 3 others inside the main deck, so I can see that second one ASAP. Next up, we have one of the most important cards in the deck going all the way back into the set 2 days. This is really the card that carried all Eraser as a deck on its entire back, and that is 3 copies of Sugar Rush Power Up. This card is absolutely nuts, man. Being able to just put +2 speed, +4 damage, that is such a big stat spread, especially when you've already got 2 speed on it. 4 speed to a move very quickly puts it into the unblockable range. Probably my favorite turn 2 play in the deck is if you can turbo to 10 in your discard pile really quickly, being able to Sugar Rush Cloth Assault for effectively a 9 mid for 9 on turn 2. It's like super unblockable unless they're packing that sneaky plus ultra. It's just so easy to really trap your opponent into position where a big Sugar Rush move, they do not have a way to deal with it. Their whole board is sealed down. They can't use their character abilities. It's just so hard to deal with a card like this, putting so many stats on things. And additionally, when you block with this, you can commit your character to draw 2 because you just have to block with any action, not necessarily Erase. So like being able to block with your +1 high and then draw 2 cards, it's just nuts, man. Like as just a powerful standalone action, this card's presence in the deck is so good. But then when you think about all the ways it combos in tandem with the rest of our deck and its desire to see actions be played, it's just such an insanely good part of our kit. And it's one of the reasons why I like Eraser on all so much. One of the questions people have posed for centuries is, how does Eraserhead kill people? Sugar Rush. Sugar Rush is a card that just kills people. Alright, so we've talked a lot about how to take down our rival as Eraserhead. Now let's talk about surviving, because that is what our staging area does. We have very few aggressive buttons to press, but all of the defensive buttons to press, and that's kind of how we stay alive and block everything as Eraserhead. So first off, we've got 4 copies of Specialist of Sound. Specialist of Sound, simply put, is just some of the best speed reduction in the entire game. This is another one of the big reasons why I like all over Void, is both decks have a -3 speed, right? And the Void deck has Heroic Lineage, but Lineage needs to see them pump damage onto something, and as Eraserhead, you don't want to only block things when they become threatening. You want to block everything. So this, being a much more proactive speed reduction, is much preferable to the speed reduction in Void, which is much more reactive in Heroic Lineage. Huge part of our survive everything game plan. This deck could not live the way it does were it not for -3 speed on top of all of Eraserhead's -2 speeds. It just says that as long as I have cards in my hand, speed is not an issue. I am blocking all of your attacks. And when we are effectively a 9 hand size character, that's very powerful. Next up, we have what might be the very best card in our entire deck, and that is 3 copies of Spooky. Spooky is insane. Swapping the stats on our rival's attack is absolutely nuts. In our character that says they already start at -2 speed, we can give them -3 more speed. -5 speed often means 0 speed, especially for every single throw in the game that we just get to then commit and say your move is 0 damage now. Let's proceed. Eraserhead is like the best spooky deck ever, and on all we just get to push that agenda even more because we get to go an on-demand -3 speed. Again, way better than the Void version does. Spooky is effectively just a free block anytime that it's on the board. One of the reasons this guy is just so unkillable in the all symbol. Next up, we have another card that goes absolutely amazingly with Spooky, and that's 3 copies of Challenging the Fakes. Challenging the Fakes is oh so delicious in this deck. Most of the time you would think, wait, an unblocked attack? I thought you said that we wanted to block everything, Levi. Well, we do, but oftentimes we're going to Spooky an attack, and this just says we get to make an attack 0 damage and then flip this and their next check is terrible. Most of the time, if they're trying to go in on you, they have to opt to just fail the check, which just means that you flipped this to discard a card out of their hand for practically free. It's especially good against things that want to like pass things on to their next one. So say they play like a double jab and you challenge the fakes it, you're throwing their +2 into the void. If they're playing Staff Strike, they have to have a non-weapon in their hand to throw away to this card's check. Otherwise, you'll eat one of their 2, your next weapon ignores progressives. It's effectively just a pseudo breaker 2 on a flip. Next up, continuing forward the train of stain cards, we've got 3 copies of Hero Killer in this deck. Hero Killer is a pretty deceptive card in this deck. Being able to have spot removal for any foundation that they build down that we just really don't want to deal with is quite nice, but for the most part we really play this card for the deadlock. The deadlock essentially is one of those deadlocks that says your rival cannot go into deadlock or they just lose the game, and a lot of times because of just the way that this deck functions, we charge headfirst into deadlock pretty often. So having just this like really strong equalizer piece that there's almost no level of interaction for, aside from like flipping it or destroying it before that happens, which we have ways to prevent, you'll see soon, is very, very good. This card just reads that our rival can't go into deadlock, and that's pretty much the #1 reason it's in here. Next up, let's take a look at 3 copies of Villains Defeated. I love Villains Defeated, man. This has been one of my favorite cards since the game came out. One of the first decks that I built was Chaos Mina, and I just loved using this card to be able to deny my opponent's momentum, being able to remove things like electric jolts and 0 gravity lifts from going into momentum, and just healing. Being able to heal in our 19 health character is so good, man. This card is just really strong. On top of that, there's a lot more discard in the game now, so having that extra bit of hand replenishment after they discard us is also extremely nice. And then the last 2 difficulty foundation in our deck is 2 copies of Unexpected Hero. Now for a very, very long time, these were actually 2 copies of Prone to Dry Eyes as a source of additional damage pump in the deck, but the more I thought about it, +3 damage on one specific move rather than +1 or 2 to everything over the course of the turn at a much higher cost was just a way better exchange, so they eventually converted into Unexpected Heroes. Alternatively, it's effectively an extra 2 copies of Specialist of Sound, albeit at a one-time use. It's also a low block, which is an extremely valuable commodity in our deck, over Prone to Dry Eyes' mid block, which is basically a non-block in our deck because we always have a race. That's another thing too, is like Challenging the Fakes as +4 mid block is never a detriment to us because we almost always have a race when we need to block mid. Also, being able to just draw when they discard is really good. Obviously, it's very good with stuff like Cloth Capture, but even when your rival is attacking you and they want to use stuff like One with Nature, a very popular card right now, or things like Texas Smash as discard, like there's a lot of aggressive discard outlets in the game, and this being able to become a passing the torch the second they do one of those is really good. All right, now let's move on to our spams because we've got some very, very cool ones, and the first is 4 copies of Late Riser. Man, this deck plays Late Riser like an absolute champion, and I really love it for that. Effectively +1 damage on every single one of our moves just for them existing is extremely good. On top of that, the discard effect is very, very relevant. Being able to pitch this for erase on the defense and giving -4 speed is nuts, and the same thing aggressively +3 speed is really, really good. Honestly, it would just be hard to close out games without this card in our deck, and it's a very, very valuable card for that. The +4 low block is obviously not very attractive, but with all the speed reduction you have in this deck, it's honestly pretty playable most of the time. Next up, we're rocking 4 copies of Mediator in this deck. Mediator just gets to trade itself for -3 speed and drawing a card if we've played an action, which once again counts if we've blocked with an action, and that's just a very strong exchange rate. But another big part about Mediator is that it says your rival's attack gets -speed, meaning if you play an action aggressively, you can just start popping these to draw cards on the offense, which is just really, really beautiful. The last of our 1 difficulty foundations, we've got 4 copies of Chivalrous Competitor. Ah yes, the almighty Chivalrous Competitor. This card's so good, but there's just so many situations you can orchestrate to where you and your rival both drawing a card is so much better for you than it is for them. But of course, the biggest biggest benefit of this card inside of your deck is that you get to protect your spooky. You get to protect your most important pieces from being flipped or destroyed, which Seize the Advantage is the best card in the game right now and is in almost every single relevant meta deck at 4 copies, and you have to be able to protect your spooky from that card. Eraserhead without a spooky is a very vulnerable Eraserhead, and that is one of the biggest things that pushed me from the Void builds all the way back to the All build, is that they do not get this card. The Void build has no way to protect Spooky from being messed with, and that is just one of the biggest detractors to being able to survive everything, which is like the reason why you play this guy in the first place. We've got 4 copies of It Can't Be Fixed. This card's nuts. A 1 high block on a 0 diff that just builds a free foundation anytime you get stunned. It's just crazy. There are a lot of really good 0 diffs in the game right now, but It Can't Be Fixed is still one of the best. Now, a newcomer in the busted 0 diff ring is 3 copies of Easily Excited. Easily Excited is also great. Again, just a 0 diff with a great off-zone block that gives +1 speed for free is really, really solid. I'd be playing 4 of these, but there's already a ton of high blocks in this deck, and I want the slots for a couple more low blocks, which you're going to see in the very next card. And then the last 0 in our deck is just 3 copies of Rooftop Vantage. I'll be frank with you guys, the text on this card is pretty irrelevant. I am almost exclusively playing this card because it's a 0 diff with a +2 low block. If you wanted it to be a card with relevant text but you have to maintain a low block though, you could easily make it more copies of Unexpected Hero, or you could play something like Daunting Message in its slot, which is also a spam, but it's really the 0 that I'm playing Rooftop Vantage for. This card is very good. Honestly, this card's text is really, really good, but for me, when I'm playing a 7 hand size defensive character, I really like having 10 zeros. Don't ask me why, that's just the number I've tested. It's become like my safety number for almost every single turn 1 build. I see that 0 so I can get my guaranteed build 4. So this card is just in here so I can maintain that personal safety net number, but they could very easily be Dauntings if you want to. In the same vein, if you wanted to play a really powerful card like Snack Time, you could cut out some of the Easily Excited or It Can't Be Fixed to play this card if you're okay with playing less zeros to get some more relevant text on your cards. And that, my dear viewers, is the entirety of this main deck. This is a 66 card main deck, 67 technically, but once the erase comes out, it's 66. It's got 20 attacks, 40 foundations, and 6 actions, so it's honestly very balanced. Block zone coverage wise, there's 30 highs, 20 mids, and 17 lows. The 20 mids is perfectly fine because you will always have your erase. The 17 lows is not fantastic, but I really just don't know how to fit much more into the deck. A lot of the non-low blocks are just really not very cuttable cards. On top of that though, we're also the best spooky deck in the game. It's really easy to just be able to spooky any low attack they send. The first thing I want to talk about on the sideboard is there's 3 copies of Nightwatch. As a deck whose entire shtick is being able to both answer and block anything and everything your opponent throws your way, having a card like Nightwatch is so good because Nightwatch just says, hey, that one thing I didn't plan for or didn't account for or can't deal with, just cancel that. That's like my free mess up, right? Is Nightwatch in an Eraserhead deck. And the deadlock ability is really great too, so why isn't it in the sideboard? The only thing is you could really cut for Nightwatch in the main is either Challenging the Fakes or Villains Defeated. But honestly, I value these 2 cards really, really highly, and even more so over Nightwatch. If you find that you're not getting huge traction out of this card, main the Nightwatches instead and then just sideboard these. The next card, if we need even more momentum denial, is 2 copies of Capture Evildoers in the sideboard. Capture Evildoers is great, man. Being able to just remove your rival's momentum is so freaking good in this deck. We don't get that much traction out of the form just because we don't need to discard Whiplashes from our card pool, and we always want one thing in there so our combos can keep going off, but it is there. Next up, I have a slew of 1-ofs in here. First, we have the 4th Total Erasure Binding for those matchups where the rival's character is really important during attacks. Then I have the 4th Villains Defeated for the throw decks and for the air decks. The 4th Challenging the Fakes for things that want to pass stats or pass check bonuses on. The 4th Spooky for any deck that's really, really stacking up on their low zones, that we always have that Spooky, or for the decks that are really, really playing those cards that remove it or flip it or destroy it. And then the last card in the sideboard is just 1+ Ultra. I think if you want an aggressive character to put into your sideboard so that you can close out game 3 really quickly if it ever gets there, you could also play either Jiro or Ojiro inside of this deck and they would work really well. So I think that's also something to highly consider. It's just not something I've played around with a lot yet, so I can't personally recommend it, but it does seem very good in theory if you want to try it out. Speaking of trying this deck out, if you really liked this list and you want to give it a shot yourself, I'm going to have the UVS link down below in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you want to go ahead and leave a like or a positive comment while you're down there, I would truly appreciate the support and the feedback. And if you watched all the way to the end of this video, first first of all, thank you so much, because this is probably going to be a very long one. And then second of all, if you really enjoyed it, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, because I put out videos like this 6 times a week, ranging from deck profiles to gameplay videos to tier lists to meta discussions and anything else under the sun, MHA CCG, that I feel like creating. We are pushing really hard on the train to 1,000 subscribers right now, and it's been such a wild ride, and I really can't wait till we can get there, hit that big milestone, because I have so much more fantastic stuff planned after that. That's all the time I've got for this video though, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and if you give this deck a shot and have any recommendations, leave those down in the comments section below too, because I'm always looking for feedback and of course to be proven wrong. This has been Levi, and I hope that I'll see you guys in the next video.